to welcome all of you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Peninsula, and I'm the president of the congregation here. So we're very happy to have you all here. I'd like to introduce Robin Van Tyne, who's a member here, who will talk to you next.
Wow, nice turnout. Thank you, everybody, for being here on this rather grim night of cold rain. But, August is going to be different, so let's enjoy it. But thank you, everyone, for coming. I know we're all concerned about having as much parkland as possible and being sure that the prison farm becomes part of the park as is in the master plan. So that's the focus of this meeting, the way forward. Our city manager and representative from Parks and Rec will fill us in on that. But I'd like to introduce the president of Citizens for Riverview Farm Park, Adrian Whitcomb. I gotta tell you, he is a one-man source of action of
Crusader.
I think he spends 80 hours a day on this project. So thank you, Adrian.
Thank you very much for all of you for coming tonight. I realize there's a lot of work to be done, and I encourage each of you to find something that you can do. I don't expect you to do nearly as much as some of us do, some of us who've been involved in this for more than a year now, but every little bit will help. Now, what we're doing here tonight mainly is asking questions of the city manager and the representative from the Parks Department. So I'll introduce Cynthia Rohlf. She's been city manager now for a few weeks. For about 8 years, is that right?
9.
9 years now. 9, okay. And she'll introduce the Michael Nealor when it's his time to come up. And they'll each say a few things, and then we'll have some questions from the audience. All right. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, and good evening. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. When I talked with the group, we got the invitation to come and join you. I had a question, what would you like for me to do? What would you like for me to talk about? I know City Farm, obviously, but I think the way it was put about we need to talk about the way forward was a good way to characterize the kind of discussion that we need to have tonight. Just so you'll have, it was mentioned, I've been with the city, I'm the new city manager. I've been as the city manager since March 28th, so it's a little less than a month. And I had about 2 weeks before that as acting to really, get into it. So, but it's certainly my pleasure, and it's an exciting time in the city of Newport News, and I've been very excited and feel very blessed and pleased that the council selected me to play this role and to work with the citizens on not just the city farm issue, but a number of issues moving forward. So again, I'm excited, and I think there's a great future in the city. I'm looking forward to working with everybody as we realize that future. But, as you mentioned, I have been with the city 9 years, but I've been in local government for over 30, and I can say I always think I've seen about everything and I've heard about just about everything, and then something comes along and says totally surprises or shocks me. But I have discovered over the years a lot of the things just keep recycling. You hear an issue, and then a few years later it keeps coming back in other variations. But what I want to do tonight is talk to you again, as I said, about the way forward. I know that there is some history, and I know folks have some concerns, and let me tell you up front, I understand, and I respect your concerns. But the way forward is the direction and the conversations that we've had with council. I can say they have been very supportive, but one thing that they do want to see, whether it turns out to be a park or some variation thereof, it's not been decided yet. I know there's certain council members here, and Dr. Woodbury, I'm sure, has told you on many occasions how she feels, and I certainly respect and support her position and understand that. But what we want to do as far as have a process, and while, again, it's been less than a month, and I came in the middle of a lot of things going on, and while I've been with the city 9 years and I have a lot of information, there's some things I wasn't directly involved in, so I've been kind of trying to come up to speed on some of those initiatives, and the city farm was one of those areas. But I can honestly say, as far as I knew, up until the presentation that was made to council back in the late fall, early winter, I was not aware of anything else going on. So at this particular point in time, to the best of my knowledge, this is kind of where we are, and this is our start, our fresh start, however you want to look at it. But what my intention is to do, and what I've been working towards, and we've already have staff working on it, and there's some staff in the room that can attest to that, but I want to come back to council from what council has asked with a process, and that process will lay out how we want to move going forward on looking at the city farm and what the city farm should ultimately be. My understanding is from council is, other than a few that have pretty strong opinions, they just want to look at their options, they want to look at the opportunities. I've heard everything from it being a moneymaker, not that it has to pay its own way, because we all know pretty much government doesn't do that. There isn't a park or pretty much most of the activities in the city that are self-supporting. It's a very small portion of what we do, but we do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's what we need to do to provide for our citizens. But as I said, the direction or the guidance I'm getting from council is, so let's come up with a process. So we have staff from our planning department, and some people in this room made some suggestions to us, which were good suggestions, that we go out and take a look at working with the American Planning Association. There were some concerns in terms of how much it would be and what the cost would be and what we could do to keep the costs down. So that's going to be in the back of our minds. But for me, from this perspective, with a little bit of the history, even though there isn't a lot over the last few months, I think it would be helpful for us to have an outside person work with us in this process if we can work through that. I think it would send a message that we're open, that we want to listen, that we're transparent, all those kinds of things, and that's the message we want to say, that we want to send out there to the citizens, that we will go through a process. But I can tell you we're looking at the American Planning Association, and what we've learned through that process is they don't just come in, you just don't ask them, and they don't just come in and say, okay, we're going to do your project. You have to apply. So there's a process that you have to go through. You have to apply, and they determine whether or not they are interested in doing your project. We think it'd be an excellent project for them to do. If they select us as part of this process, and the application process goes through the end of June, so sometime after that we should know where we would stand in that application process. If they select our project, they will bring experts in from around the country to take a look at, all aspects and come back to us with ideas, have a public process, talk to stakeholders, get folks engaged, and have a very open process. Because, and I've had this conversation with a few people, it's one thing to say that you want an open process or you want to listen, but you also have to hear what people are saying. I can listen all day, and then if I turn around and do something that's not necessarily in line with or contrary to what I'm hearing, then that's not good either. We've got to do everything that we can to work with the people in this room and the people throughout the city. Because I've said to the group, I understand and I respect your position, and I understand in terms of what you'd like to see at the city farm. Don't necessarily agree or disagree with it. But we, as city council, tell you, represent 183-some thousand people. So I think it's my job to work with council to help them to come up with a process, help them navigate through that process, and in some ways guide them when I can to look at the issues and come back with what we think the best plan would be for the citizens of Newport News. It's not real difficult from my perspective. It's just a process that we have to follow. And I don't think there's any way that council would support any process that wasn't involving the public. But as I said, the public will encompass more than just the folks in this room. And I've had this conversation with some of the members of the group, and they understand that we need to have stakeholders. Those stakeholders may be citizens, they may be committee members from various boards and commissions, say the Planning Commission, they may be developers, they may be from economic development. But it's key to me in this role to get people around the table. Because you may agree with some things that people suggest, and they may bring ideas forward that make sense. But again, it's for me about listening and having a process that is engaging and open. And everyone, we hear a lot about transparent. And I think sometimes that word gets overused. To me, I'd rather say open, because open means that you're open and you're listening. You know, as I said, you can be transparent, but if you're not doing what people want you to do or what people think you should be doing, then all you have is transparency and everybody knows that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, as opposed to having an open process where you're listening, engaging, and communicating. I think, and again, it's no judgment calls on anything as we go through this process, could we have done a better job of communicating on some things from a staff perspective? Absolutely. Could we have been more engaging? Absolutely. But at the time, I think things were made based on the information that people had and the way they were trying to move something forward. So again, I can only say to you, as I stand up here, I am committed and I promise you, I will always listen. We may not always agree. We may not always end up in the same place, but I will always engage you. I will listen. I will be open. And we will have a process that everybody feels, I hope, that they have been somehow engaged in as we've gone through it. It's, as I said, I'm shooting because I really think council needs to get through the budget. In case you haven't noticed, we've got a lot of other issues with the budget and some concerns. So I really think we need to get through that process into the month of May. It is my hope by June to be going to council and laying out, this is what the process is. This is what we're thinking of doing. This is what the public input would be. These are the kinds of people that we think need to be engaged from the citizens' perspective, from business perspectives, from, I said, boards and commissions, whether it's the planning commission, all those types of groups. And we need to lay out that process and how we're going to move forward and get people engaged. Now, I can tell you from the American Planning Association, if they don't select us, we're working on Plan B also. We're not just putting all of our eggs. If come the end of that process, they say, no, Newport News isn't necessarily the project we want to work on. We will have a Plan B, and we will have the cost outlined to it. I've already talked to staff, whatever costs we have associated with it, we need to do everything we need to minimize. And we joked with the group because some of the costs, obviously, if somebody are coming in from outside of the area or other places in the country, they need some place to stay. Well, I've heard people that have rooms that are willing to we'll see, but it's just things like that. We will, if we have to work with the hotels to see if we can get reduced rates. I mean, we're going to do everything we can to minimize the cost, but I can't tell you that there won't be some costs. But I can tell you, from my perspective, it will be more than worth the process that we need to go through to get what we need to do for people to feel comfortable that you've been heard and that we have a process ultimately that benefits the best of the city. And again, I wish I could tell you that we're always going to agree and that we're all going to end up in the same place. But I can tell you it's always going to be, I'm going to give it my best effort to get us where we need to be. And council has been very supportive of a process and feels that this whole city farm project is very important. And they put it at the highest level, because I know I've gotten some feedback. What's taking so long? Why can't you just do this? Why can't you just do that? That would be nice, but again, I have to take into consideration a whole lot of other factors. Believe me, we have heard what most of the people in this room would like to see happen out there, and we've heard from the council members, and I hear that, I respect it, I listen to it, but I do still think it would be helpful that the product, even if we said tomorrow, a park, absent public process, I think we'd be missing out on the opportunity to get some really good ideas, because obviously there's suggestions, there's things that I'm not going to think of, that people in this room wouldn't necessarily think of, that others may think of. And I said to the group before, the small group that I have met with, it's not that I can see the vision, I understand various visions, but I tend to be more on the side, you give me that vision, I'm going to get it done. So that's kind of where I tend to fall from a manager perspective, but I do take very seriously the need to work with council to get them that process, to help them facilitate the process, and to get an end result that we think is in the best interest of the city. So I could ramble on and on and on, but that's kind of my message in a nutshell. I have Michael Nealor here, who's from Parks and Rec, and Michael, fortunately or unfortunately, is like me. A lot of these things, the studies and the plans I've read happened way before either one of us got here. So we have secondhand information, but we'll do our best to answer any questions or respond to comments or concerns of anything that you may have.